Get ready. I'm about to tear apart what you thought was science. Textbooks, movies, doctor's advice, facts that have been drummed into your head for years. All of it is falling apart at the seams. You're about to learn 20 scientific fakes that even scientists still believe. And yes, you were repeating some of these truths just yesterday. So buckle up your brains. We're about to destroy your knowledge, beautifully, harshly, and forever. Fact number 1. The 10% brain myth is the sweetest lie humanity has ever told itself. And the funny thing is that even scientists, who you'd think would use a little more than their 10%, believed it for decades. This myth is the perfect scenario for Hollywood movies. An ordinary person takes a miracle pill, unlocks the remaining 90% of their brain, and suddenly begins to read minds, move objects, and understand quantum physics as easily as the multiplication table. A wonderful fantasy and completely unscientific nonsense. The truth is that your brain is already working at full capacity, constantly, without pause, even when you sleep, even when you watch the dumbest videos or argue in the comments. Neuroimaging shows that almost all areas of the brain are always active, just at different levels. The 10% myth was born in the early 20th century due to grossly inaccurate quotations, mistranslations, and a thirst for sensationalism. It was picked up by journalists, then motivational speakers, then filmmakers. And just like that, a mass virus was born. But here's the thing, if you really only use 10% of your brain, the remaining 90% would be dead tissue. That's not a superpower. That's the condition of a patient with severe trauma. That's not evolution, that's a vegetable. So yes, you already use your entire brain. And if you're not impressed with the results, it's not because of the percentage, it's because of the content. Fact number 2. The myth of learning styles is one of the most persistent scientific viruses of the 21st century. For decades, people have been divided into visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learners, as if it were a horoscope disguised as pedagogy. The irony is that not only teachers and parents believe this, but even scientists who themselves taught students to think critically. And it doesn't work at all. Not one bit. Not 1 gram. If learning styles were real, then auditory learners would fail exams with texts, visual learners would fail lectures without pictures, and kinesthetic learners would fall into a coma at the sight of a school desk. But all of this is a beautiful fantasy that has been destroyed by large meta-analyses. The truth is unpleasantly simple. The human brain learns the same way, not through style, but through normal things: attention, repetition, and meaningful practice. The myth of learning styles has survived only because it is convenient. It's nice to think that you are a special type of brain wiring. It's nice to explain your failures. Well, I'm an auditory learner. It's uncomfortable for me. It's like horoscopes, only with a license from the Department of Education. So if you still consider yourself a visual learner, relax. Your brain works the same way as everyone else's. It's not special, it's just lazy, like you. Fact number 3. If you've ever heard that glass is a liquid that just flows very slowly, don't be embarrassed. Even people with scientific degrees believe this nonsense. For decades. Some still believe it. The myth arose from a simple observation. In old buildings, the windows are thicker at the bottom than at the top. And so, the logical conclusion was that glass had been flowing down, drop by drop, for centuries. Like honey, only 100,000 times slower. The problem is that glass is not a liquid, and it never has been. It is an amorphous solid material.
Yes, the atoms in it are not arranged in a perfect crystal, but they do not move freely as in a liquid. They sit in place more rigidly than many subscribers in the comments. Why are old windows crooked? Because they were made by hand, at a temperature of 1,000 degrees, by blowing uneven glass plates. And they were installed as they turned out, thick part down, just to make the window stronger. No mysticism, no fluidity, just the crooked hands of ancient glassblowers. So the reality is simple. Glass does not flow, but the myth flows, from teacher to student, from lecturer to student, slowly but surely. Fact number 4. If you are convinced that water in a sink swirls clockwise in one hemisphere and counterclockwise in the other, relax. You are in very good company. This myth is beloved by tourists, tour guides, geography teachers, and every other blogger. Only one thing is true. The Coriolis effect really does exist. But it is so weak that it cannot even move a soccer ball, let alone a sink. It affects huge objects, cyclones, ocean currents, global air circulation, but not on your bathtub, sink, or toilet. So why does the water swirl? Because you turned the faucet crooked, because the cup is uneven, because there is the slightest movement, turbulence, tilt, or microflow in the water. A sink is chaos, where everything works except large-scale physics. But the myth lives on because it sounds beautiful. People love secret forces, especially if they are geographical and mysterious. Guides in Africa even put on a show. See? Rotation to the right. Now let's take 3 steps, and it's spinning to the left. Spoiler alert, they're just carefully pouring water at the right angle. So, the Coriolis effect is real, but if you explain it to them using a sink drain, it's no longer physics, it's magical thinking. Fact number 5. We are used to seeing lions as the ideal predators, regal, powerful, dominant, and constantly hunting. But the reality is a little humiliating for the king. Most of the hunting in the pride is done by the lionesses. They are faster, more enduring, and work as a group. They hunt for food, coordinate ambushes, run kilometers after antelope, and all this without a crown. And what does the male do? He guards the territory from other males, protects the pride, sleeps a lot, eats first from the prey caught by the lionesses. The lion is not a lone hunter. He is the chief bodyguard, not the chief provider. And yes, lionesses can live without him, but he can hardly live without them. The myth of the king of the hunt is a striking image, but it is by no means a scientific fact. Fact 6. We have all watched detective shows where an expert solemnly declares, "The DNA matches 100%, case closed." This gives viewers the impression that DNA analysis is an absolute, magical truth without a single error. But the truth is much more complicated and far less cinematic. DNA is not a barcode or a unique QR code for a person. It is a huge sequence from which forensic scientists study only small sections, markers. They do not give a 100% match, they give a probability. And sometimes that probability can play a cruel joke. There have been real cases where an almost perfect match led to the arrest of innocent people. There have been cases of cross-contamination where a sample was accidentally mixed with another. There have been cases where identical markers were found in relatives, and the investigation followed a false lead. The technology is powerful, revolutionary, and incredibly useful, but it is not omnipotent. The idea that DNA is never wrong is a Hollywood myth that is spread faster than scientific facts. Science is precise, but detectives are not. Fact 7. You've probably heard the phrase, "Crystals grow, so they must be alive." It's surprising how often even people with scientific backgrounds say this. And indeed, crystals do grow, have shape, and can reproduce, if we consider their ability to form new structures. At first glance, their behavior is almost like that of organisms. But the key word here is almost. Crystals are not alive. They have no metabolism, no genes, no ability to evolve. They do not consume energy,
adapt to environmental changes, or respond to stimuli in a biological sense. Yes, nature gives us the illusion of living behavior when chemical structures behave in an organized manner. But this is just physics. Molecules connect according to rules, like pieces of a construction set. It's beautiful, sometimes even frighteningly similar to life, but it's not life. Although, who knows how many more surprises the world of matter has in store. Fact number 8. All our lives, we have been told that the use of tools is the main feature that distinguishes humans from animals. Hammers, sticks, levers, spears, all these are evidence of our unique intelligence. But nature has been laughing at this myth for decades. Chimpanzees make sticks to get termites out of their nests. Crows bend wire into hooks to get bait. Otters use stones as hammers to break shells. Octopuses carry coconut halves as shields and shelters. Some animals don't just use tools, they create them, test them, remember them, and pass on their skills to each other. This is no accident. It's culture. We are not unique. We are just the best at mass production. But the ability to use objects is not a privilege of Homo sapiens. It is a normal part of evolution that appears in those who need it. And the more scientists observe animals, the more obvious it becomes. The only species that does not believe this is humans. Fact 9. Textbooks have always seemed to be a source of pure truth. Formulas, diagrams, and facts are presented as the definitive version of reality. Generation after generation learns the same thing, but the scientific world is completely different. It is constantly evolving, debating, dismantling old ideas, and building new ones. The problem is that textbooks do this extremely slowly. What is considered a fact today may turn out to be a mistake, an incorrect interpretation, or even a refuted theory tomorrow. The classic scientific truths that we learned in school are often decades behind current research. For example, the map of taste buds on the tongue, a translation error. The food pyramid, a product of lobbying. The brain works at 10% capacity, fantasy. Glass, a liquid? Only in myths. A textbook is a snapshot of science taken in the past. Real science is an endless video that continues right now. And the more you trust the textbook, the more likely you are to live in a world that no longer exists. Fact number 10. At school, we were told, sound does not travel in space. Period. Absolute vacuum. No waves, nothing. But this is a half-truth that has been turned into a myth. Yes, ordinary sound, the kind that travels through air, water, or metal, cannot travel in a vacuum. But space is not homogeneous and not completely empty. Between stars and galaxies, there are huge clouds of plasma, gas, and dust. And these environments are quite capable of conducting vibrations. It's just that cosmic sound is not like earthly sound. NASA regularly publishes sounds of space, real data converted into the audible range. Black holes hum. Nebular clouds vibrate. The solar wind sings. And although you won't hear your neighbors cry on a spaceship in space, the universe itself is a giant symphony that we simply cannot perceive without instruments. Textbooks simplify the wording so as not to burden school children with plasma physics. But reality is much more interesting. Fact number 11. This myth is so deeply ingrained that even adults are convinced that blood inside the body is blue and only turns red when it comes into contact with oxygen. It sounds nice, it sounds logical, it sounds almost scientific. But it is completely false. Blood is always red. The shade may vary, from bright scarlet to dark cherry, but it is never blue. So why do veins look blue? The answer is simple and surprising at the same time. It's an optical illusion. Our tissues scatter and absorb light differently, and the skin filters the spectrum so that red is deeply absorbed and blue is reflected. This is why veins appear blue. But if you cut one open, which you shouldn't do, the blood will still be red. Textbooks, for simplicity's sake, have remained silent about the interaction of light with tissue, and the myth has become common knowledge. Fact 12. This phrase sounds like the wisdom of centuries. Lightning never strikes twice in the same place. It is used to describe the rarity, uniqueness, and irreproducibility of an event. But nature laughs at this expression. Lightning is not a whim, but physics. It seeks the shortest and least resistant path to the ground. And if a specific point, a tall tree, tower, or skyscraper is such a path, it will receive discharges again and again. The Empire State Building in New York is struck by lightning up to 25 times a year. Some volcanic peaks are struck dozens of times during a single storm. Even the same person can be struck repeatedly, and such cases have been documented. The phrase "lightning doesn't strike twice" is a beautiful but dangerous metaphor. Real lightning is practical and predictable. If you stand next to its favorite target, you can be sure that the chance of being struck only increases. Fact 13. This is one of the cutest, funniest, and at the same time cruelest myths. Goldfish can't remember anything for more than 3 seconds. It sounds convenient. Every circle in the aquarium is like a new world. Every time is like meeting their owner for the first time. But reality destroys this comfortable illusion.
Goldfish have a long memory, measured in weeks and months, not seconds. They are excellent learners. They navigate simple mazes, remember feeding times, distinguish between people, respond to sounds and signals. In experiments, fish were taught to associate the sound of a bell with food, and they remembered it after 5 months. 3-second memory is a myth that was created to make it easier for people to keep animals in small glass jars without feeling guilty. But fish are not decorations. They are smarter than they seem. Fact 14. Most people have a neat little diagram in their heads. Life follows a straight line, from single-celled organisms to fish, to reptiles, to mammals, to humans. But this diagram is a work of fiction, created by textbooks for convenience. Evolution is not a ladder or a straight line, but a branching tree where millions of species appear, disappear, die out, and evolve in parallel. And progress is not its goal. Evolution does not strive for complexity. It strives for survival here and now. Some species become simpler, not more complex. Some remain almost unchanged for millions of years because their strategy is already perfect. And some random mutations that seemed useless suddenly become the key to survival in a new climate. If we were to rewind the Earth and start life over again, humans might never have appeared. We are not the top, but just one of the side branches that got lucky. Evolution is not a march forward, but an endless bush growing in all directions. Fact 15. At school, we were shown an ideal sphere, a smooth blue sphere, like a glass ball. This creates the impression that the Earth is a perfect geometric object. But reality is much less neat. The Earth is not a sphere, but a flattened ellipsoid, which also has dozens of irregularities, dents, and bulges. The equator protrudes 21 kilometers further than the distance from the center of the Earth to the poles.
The Himalayas raise the surface upward, while deep ocean trenches pull it downward. And if we look not at the crust, but at the gravitational shape of the planet, the Earth becomes even stranger. There are small anomalies, bubbles, and differences in gravity everywhere. In other words, our planet is not a perfectly smooth sphere. It is a slightly warped, slightly bulging, and in places crooked object, much closer to a potato than to a perfect sphere. Textbooks simplify the picture, but science is much more honest. The Earth is beautiful in its unevenness.
Fact 16. We've heard this myth our whole lives. Don't give kids sweets, they'll become uncontrollable. It seems obvious. A child eats sugar, sugar gives energy, the child explodes. But dozens of controlled scientific studies have proven that sugar does not cause hyperactivity. The experiments were conducted as follows. One group was given sweets, the other was given a calorie-free sweetener, but the parents were told that their child had been given sugar. The result? The children behaved the same way. But the parents of the children who got sugar began to see hyperactivity in their behavior, even though there was no sugar involved. This is called the expectation effect. We think that the child will go crazy and begin to interpret any movement as confirmation of the myth. In fact, this is not biochemistry, but adult psychology. Sugar can give a short burst of energy, but it does not turn children into a hurricane. Fact number 17. This is one of the most common medical myths. If you get sick, take antibiotics. They'll help with everything. But antibiotics have no effect on viruses at all. Not a drop. Not a gram. They do not affect any viral mechanism. Why is this important? Because most common illnesses are viral. Colds, flu, many types of tonsillitis, rotaviruses, COVID, adenoviruses, bronchitis. And when people take antibiotics just in case, they do not cure the disease, kill beneficial microflora, create antibiotic resistance, a global threat. Antibiotics only work on bacteria, Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, Pneumococcus, etc. But viruses are a completely different enemy, fundamentally different in terms of their biochemistry. And yes, the misuse of antibiotics on a mass scale is not just a myth, but a real health problem of the 21st century. Fact 18. Almost everyone is convinced that taste equals tongue. It has receptors for sweet, bitter, sour, salty, and umami, which means it does all the work. But that's only half the truth. Most of what we call taste is smell. Up to 80% of taste sensations are created not by the tongue, but by the nose. When you chew food, aroma molecules rise to the nose through the reverse passage, retronasal, and create what the brain perceives as taste. Therefore, when you have a cold, food tastes bland. Apples and potatoes taste the same if you hold your nose. The differences in taste between wines or coffees are actually the work of the olfactory system. The tongue only provides basic signals, but the real taste is the combined work of the tongue, nose, and brain, which mixes everything into a cocktail of sensations. So you don't just taste food, you smell the taste. Fact 19. Pop culture has taught us to think that a black hole is some kind of super powerful cosmic vacuum cleaner that sucks in planets, stars, and anything else that comes near it. But this is a beautiful simplification that has nothing to do with reality. A black hole does not pull anything toward itself any more strongly than any other mass of the same size. If the sun were magically replaced by a black hole of the same mass, the Earth would continue to rotate calmly in its orbit. No vacuum cleaner, no catastrophic suction. The main feature of black holes is not gravity, but the point of no return, the event horizon. Anything that crosses it can no longer escape. But at a distance, gravity is normal. In other words, a black hole is dangerous only when you are close to it, but not because it sucks you in, but because it has an area from which there is no way back. It is not a cosmic vacuum cleaner. It is simply an object with enormous mass and a very interesting boundary. Fact number 20. Everyone has heard their parents say at least once, "Don't crack your knuckles, you'll ruin your joints." Or, "Your back is crunching, that means your bones are rubbing together." But joint crunching is not a sign of destruction or bone friction. The sound you hear is cavitation. Small gas bubbles form inside the joint fluid, and when the joint moves sharply, the bubble collapses, creating a popping sound. There is no wear and tear. No bones rubbing against each other either. What do studies say? Years of observation have shown that people who have deliberately cracked their knuckles all their lives do not have more arthritis than those who have not. In other words, the crack is just the sound of a gas bubble, not the destruction of the body. It is only dangerous if there is pain, there is swelling, there is limited movement. Then it is no longer cracking, but a real pathology. But normal cracking? It's just your biology, not a breakdown.